Hi everyone. Hi, my name's Ellie. I'm your host for today, and you're joining us here at the University of Lincoln. I'm really delighted to welcome you, and I'm really delighted to say we've got two very special guests with us today. We've got Dr. Alex George, who you're probably aware is a passionate campaigner for mental health issues. And most recently, he was named by the Prime Minister as being the country's new youth mental health ambassadors. So we're looking forward to hearing much more on that. His role is going to be to advise the government on how to raise awareness of mental health and wellbeing in schools, colleges, and in universities. And here also with me is Julie Spencer from the University of Lincoln. Julie heads up our student wellbeing team, a really amazing team who provide astounding array of mental health and student wellbeing services and lots of support here at Lincoln. So we're student focused. We're super excited to welcome Dr. George and really delighted at this appointment and the new role. I'm going to say an immediate hi to Morgan and to Roland. Hello, thanks for joining us. Hello, Edmund. Please do say hello. Tell us where you're watching from. And also, please, if you've got a question or you've got a suggestion for an issue that you want Dr. Alex to raise on your behalf and you want him to take to the PM, he has the Prime Minister's ear, then please drop it in the chat and we'll get him to take that forwards for us. So hi Alice, hi Ravi, and I'm going to start by asking Dr. Alex a question straight away. We know that you're working in Lewisham Hospital, Dr. Alex. What on earth has that been like in recent times?
Well, hi to everyone. Hi, Ellie, and hi, Julie, and of course to everyone that's tuned in tonight. Thank you so much for your time as well to take your time out your day to watch this, and especially talking about important topics including well-being. I know it's a big focus for universities at the moment, and also huge thanks, Ellie, for congratulations around the role. I'm very passionate about mental health. I really want to do my best to represent young people, including those at university, on these issues. And so, yeah, I work at, for a bit of background for everyone, I'm an A&E doctor. I work at University Hospital Lewisham, so a very, very busy inner city A&E department, which is in southeast London. Prior to COVID, I've been working there for a good couple of years. We'd see different cases, including, injuries, from ankle sprains to people falling, to illnesses such as heart attacks, strokes, a variety of cases really. And that's something that I've really enjoyed working in London, is you have no idea what you're going to see on shift, from minor problems to big problems. And of course, a lot of what I see in A&E as well, at least probably a third of the cases I see, are related to mental health. I think it's something that people often don't realize is that A&E doctors, we deal with a lot of mental health problems, and it's a big part of my job. This last 12 months has been incredibly challenging. We have had to adapt massively, really, to what's happened in terms of the COVID pandemic. I actually remember the first kind of week or so that there was this kind of muttering or murmuring of a virus that was abroad and could be a problem, and it went from very isolated cases in parts of China to in our department in a staggering rate of knots. I think, in fact, Lewisham was one of the first to admit a patient in the UK with coronavirus, and it went from a couple of isolated cases that we saw in an isolation room in A&E to having to change the whole department and splitting COVID and non-COVID areas to deal with the immense amount of pressure that we were under. So it was a really challenging year. There's been a lot of adrenaline at the start, and the kind of we're in this together, to now it's quite tiring, I think, for a lot of staff. We still got the camaraderie, but in terms of mental health, it is a concern of mine for frontline staff. And moving forward, I want to make sure that we really take care of those who have experienced a lot throughout these times. So yeah, very different times. I am optimistic, however. I'm very pleased that the vaccine program is rolling out, and I hope that everyone, including students, will have their vaccine soon. I think it's vital that we protect ourselves, and a huge thanks to everyone that's been part of that vaccine program, and of course to everyone that's been going and having their jabs done. So yeah, it's going to be hopefully a very different summer to last time, I hope.
And I think it's good to pick up on Kelly Chick there, who's contacted us to tell you she's having her COVID jab at the moment, but who sums up the thoughts of all of us, really, when she says, we're so proud of you. So love, Kelly.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Kelly. Thank you very much. That's very kind. Thank you.
Hi. Well, thank you for inviting me too. It's super exciting to be here. So as I said, I'm Julie, I'm Head of Student Wellbeing, and it's really lovely to see some comments from some of our students are here already. So Alex, if we can sort of kick off around that care really, but it's care of you. So this is a question from the team. Clearly you're an incredibly busy individual, you know, and you wear many hats now. How do you maintain your own mental well-being, and really what strategies do you use to remain positive?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly in the last year, it's been very difficult for everyone, I think, in terms of their mental health. And I think one of the things that's both good and bad out of the pandemic is that I think we have all realized the importance of self-care, of looking after ourselves, the fact that we all experience mental health, whether good or bad, and that actually taking time out of your day, out of your, taking energy really and putting energy into looking after yourself is something that's very much worth your time and very much helps you be able to do the things you want to do. And if I expand on that a little bit, I think, my interest, if I go back maybe, and I've answered this in a slightly roundabout way, when I was at medical school, I went to Exeter Plymouth Medical School, which was called Peninsula at the time, down in Devon and Cornwall. And I loved medical school, but I spent some time out in Truro, and I think I became a little bit isolated there. I wasn't really seeing much of my friends. I became a little bit, I think, lost in myself. I stopped exercising. I wasn't getting fresh air. Spent a lot of time in my room. My sleep habit became very poor. Wasn't eating very well. As I say, very little exercise. So I kind of lost my way a little bit. And I didn't speak to anyone. I didn't speak to the university because I was concerned about how they might react. If I want to be a doctor, if I say I'm struggling, what will they think? And so I dealt with it myself by speaking to my family. I made a rule that I'd go out and walk every day, every single day. I'd get natural light. I made an exercise program for myself. I cooked my own meals. I made a plan about sleeping, going to bed at good times, and I made a rule where I'd speak to someone every single day. And a lot of the time I speak to my mum or my dad, talk about my feelings, how I felt, and I slowly got myself back to feeling myself again. But when I reflected on that a few years later, when I was working, in A&E in Lewisham, and I was seeing a lot of mental health things, was that I felt almost quite sad that I didn't feel that I could ask and speak to someone for help. And I thought, well, that's a real shame that I didn't feel that way. And secondly, I felt, well, do we really teach people about how to care for themselves? I'd been to medical school by this point, and I still hadn't really spent any time learning about self-care. I'd learned a lot about disease, pathology, surgery, accidents, medicines, drugs, all of this kind of stuff. But how much did we really do on self-care? And I thought back to school times. I thought, did we learn anything there? And so that's why, like, now I really focus my time on that. And then even throughout all the things that's going on, the projects I'm doing as a podcast, writing a book, or doing this role, working in A&E, I make time every day to go for a walk. I make sure that I get some exercise. I did exercise this morning. I make sure that I try and eat as much as possible a balanced diet. I think about things like caffeine intake so that I can sleep well at night. And all those little anchor points, I call them anchors, in your life actually culminate to how you feel and looking after yourself. But kind of going to the point around speaking and sharing, or getting support, and I'm sure we'll come back to this later. I think we have moved on a lot, and I think it's brilliant that yourself, Julie, and what you do, and that making people feel that they can ask and not feel shame. And I think particularly in the news, people have seen some of the conversations that have happened around shame and mental health, and I would say to anyone, we have made big steps in the last few years, and I hope that people don't feel ashamed. And I certainly, if I was myself in that situation now, I would certainly reach out and speak to people. So we have made progress. And I would say to anyone, if you are feeling that way, then please do, because individuals like Julie are there to support you, and I know that University of Lincoln are doing providing a lot of services and support networks for students. But I'm sure, Julie, you want to expand on that as well.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I mean, in terms of student wellbeing, we've got such a vast array of support now for students. We have a transitional team. We're really incredibly lucky with that. So they're going out to our schools and colleges and talking to our students really on. And Alex, you're so right, because one of the things we're talking to them about is those 5 ways to wellbeing: eat, sleep, diet, exercise, all the things that actually really important for them. So then when they arrive at university, in a hope, we feel that they'll be better prepared for university, because it's a tough, it can be tough. It's late, it's hard study. So it's about looking after yourself. So we're really, and a long time ago, we rebranded to wellbeing, because that's what we want to have a focus on, positive wellbeing as well. We want students to get to us way before crisis point.
Absolutely. I think just to add to that, the idea around self-care, and indeed, when you talk about mental health, in the past, people have felt like mental health is a negative word. Okay. But I think it's really exciting. It's really positive. If you're, taking care of yourself, you're practicing self-care, you're doing some of the things we've mentioned just there. Actually, you're building your own resilience. You're enabling yourself to be better prepared to face life's challenges, because we can't wrap ourselves in cotton wool. There are so many challenges out there that, for example, who could have predicted the COVID pandemic? By looking after yourself, you're better preparing yourself for those scenarios. And also you're making it more likely that you can achieve the goals you want to. There's so much I want to do, and I'm proud of some of the things that I'm working on, but I know in myself, if I wasn't taking care of myself as a primary, there's no way I could achieve any of that stuff. I couldn't do it. So practicing that stuff is vital. And one thing I think, when you're coming, for those watching and want to go to university, start these things now, because when you go to university, you'll have a new place to get used to. You'll be starting, a new routine. It is a transition in your life. And by getting into the good habits and routines that we've talked about now, when you go to university, I think you'll find that transition much easier. As you said, Julie, kind of that well-being and looking after yourself will make a big difference in that kind of in between, I think.
And the transition element, Julie, I was just going to ask you, because we've got a wonderful question from Isla Colton, who's saying she's really anxious about coming to uni for the first time. And is there any advice? And obviously, Jules, you do the amazing WOW Summer School, which is brilliant. So you might want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, love to. So we've been running WOW, which is our Wellbeing Orientation Welcome, now for 6 years. We won the national award for it 2 years ago. And it's to help students who may be anxious. So Isla, absolutely, if you're anxious about coming to university, contact the transitional team and get a pack about WOW. WOW is a 3-day, 2-night stay on campus. It's completely free of charge for our applicants. And it's to ease anxieties about attending the University of Lincoln. So we stay on site with you for the 24/7. You do sleep in student accommodation. You meet your academics much earlier than you would do if you started in the September. We do some social skills with you as well. So maybe a little bit of cooking, academic sessions with you. We take you on the city bus tour. But what's really been lovely about our WOW Summer School is that those relationships, which often are quite difficult to start with, are formed really early. So it's been hugely successful. This year we've got places for 80 students. And we're really excited. It's in July, and I'm so sorry because I can't think of the dates, but our student wellbeing team are on the chat. So I'm sure they're going to tell us what the dates are.
And we also do Friends for Life, which we start for all students. Anyone who's applying to Lincoln, you can literally sign up and we put you in touch with other people. So you can start to make friends long before you come and join us. And we've actually had a Friends for Life wedding already. So that's quite astounding. And I'm going to say really quickly, I didn't know that Dr. George went to Peninsula Medical School, which I feel really guilty about, because what that means is that I probably interviewed you, because I launched Peninsula Medical School many, many years ago now, which was probably when you went there. So it makes me feel really old. But, oh my God, George.
It's now split, isn't it? It's now Exeter Uni and Plymouth Uni. But yeah, I really enjoyed my experience there. And just to touch upon, I think what Isla said as well about being anxious. I'd say that most people are in the same boat as well, and find comfort in that. And I think, again, and I say this carefully because I don't think the pandemic has been a leveler in terms of mental health for all sorts of different reasons. But I do think that when you go to university, a lot of people do do feel anxious about that. And some of that is actually quite natural. So if you're nervous about going to university, I would kind of normalize that quite a bit. So I think I was nervous. I don't know about anyone else, but I was nervous. I was nervous. I felt my first day of my job, or I moved to a new rotation. I'm looking to move into a different hospital this summer. I know I'll be nervous ahead of that. So some of that stuff is natural, but it's how will you actually cope with those feelings and speak to your friends about it, sharing how you feel to the people when you start. Because actually, I'd imagine most people will have that shared experience and saying, look, how are you settling? I've been a bit nervous starting. How are you getting on? And I think that helps calm everyone as well.
So I'm going to ask you both because all of the questions, or there's lots and lots of questions saying, what advice would you give? Practical advice to people who are going to be joining university or who are finding it hard to be that resilient.
So do you want to go first, Julie?
Yep, can do. I think for me, Ellie, it's getting really prepared for university, about the reality of living at university. And there's simple things for me. It's, learning to cook for yourself. Alex mentioned it earlier about how he cooked a meal, and it is really, but, often we rely on our parents or the people we live with cooking, cleaning, looking after yourselves. Good sleep hygiene for me is so important. We're all going to probably, go out on a night out, but we have to remember we need to look after ourselves and get up in the morning back for university. So it's simple things for me. And really then using the services that are open, at the university, we've got a vast array of services, not just student wellbeing, we've got our lovely student support colleagues. So there's so much advice and support here for university. And then the other thing I would just say, if you are nervous, as Alex said, it's fairly normal for everybody to feel nervous about trying something new and going somewhere new and living with new people. One of the things I've always said, and I've worked here now for 20 years, is, when you move in on that first day, have a packet of biscuits, have your door open and just say, hi, my name's Julie, what's your name? And just break that ice. So really simple things for me, Ellie. Alex.
I think that's great advice, and I would say, especially what you finished with in the end there, just being open to meet new people. The simple stuff. I drink far too much tea. I love tea and very traditional Brit like that. But when I moved into my halls, I sat in the kind of open area. We had, I think, 8 rooms that was in part of our little block, and I just had a cup of tea. I made everyone tea, and before you know it, you've met everyone and you've all broken the ice and everyone's in the same boat, as you said, and you feel much better for it. Another thing I'd say in advance of moving to an area, look up, find out about, say, Lincoln, for example, things you'd like to do, your hobbies, your interests, maybe clubs you'd like to join. I love rugby, so I knew that when I went down to Peninsula, I wanted to join the Peninsula rugby team. Another great way to kind of meet people and through sport or music, whatever your interests are. So just kind of feeling a bit more settled and knowing a little bit about the area you're going to just kind of quite helps, I think, in knowing what you want to do and how you're going to spend some of your time.
That's really good. Now, there's another question that I'm going to pull out. It's a slightly different angle. It's from Alison Elizabeth, and she says that parents suffer too, and she gets very anxious about her daughter who's in her second year at uni. And we do have a parents group at the University of Lincoln, and I'd really advise you to join that, Alison, definitely. But I'm going to ask Dr. Alex and then Julie to give some advice for parents, if that's okay.
Yeah, and I can completely I can empathise, with that situation. I think particularly in the last year, students have had to face, I think, a huge amount of challenges. I know universities have done, and tried to really support students, but it has been hard for them, I think, throughout this time. And knowing as a parent, you're concerned about what the implications are on your child, whether that's in terms of academia or in terms of their well-being and stuff. I think it's completely natural. One of the things that I would say in terms of supporting, particularly in the transition of settling in at university, is just being there for them, whether it's the end of the phone and having a chat and a catch up, how are things going, having an open dialogue, I think, and just working through stuff. I think things like nerves, particularly at the start, are very natural. Whether you've gone to university or not as a parent, most people can kind of understand that first day at school, kind of thing. And just, as I say, being there for people is often, what a child or someone wants. I know when I was feeling, I was having a bit of a tough time down in Truro, being able to call my mum and talk through things and have a listening, supportive ear was like, it was a medicine in itself for me, really.
And what about you, Julie? What are your thoughts for parents?
Yeah, I mean, we often say, so we look after students from move-in Sunday, really, so that's the day they arrive, and we often say we do look after the parents. We probably dish more tissues out to the parents than the students, because obviously at that point they're incredibly excited. But one thing that the University of Lincoln have, which I don't know many universities do have, is a couple of years we did introduce a nominated person consent. So at enrolment, our students do have an opportunity to write really somebody who they think, if there's concerns raised about them, etc., that we as student wellbeing can go to that nominated person consent. So it could be a friend, a relative, a parent. And it works the other way. You know, if parents are really genuinely concerned about their child at university, and it is a scary place for some of them, you know, they can contact us. And then within the confines of our confidentiality, you know, we will do what we can. So it's an incredibly supportive environment. I'm a parent of a sixth former at the moment, so I'll probably share some of your anxieties if you're out there, parents. But I think for me, it's really important to investigate what support's available for your child at university, and encourage a child to really just, like I say, get a packet of biscuits, introduce themselves, and try and make those friendships as quickly and early as you can.
Well, it seems like, as you said, sorry, Ali, I just want to add to that. I think it's also, you know, it's the planning element is key. So, you know, for example, in terms of, you know, a big thing I kind of shout about for university students is just, you know, register with your GP, or register with a GP when you get to the campus. And the reason I say this, and let me just take an example, you know, there's a university near Lewisham, Goldsmiths, and I regularly see patients coming in who have maybe run out of, say, for example, with asthma, run out of the inhaler, the, you know, reliever inhaler, and they don't have a GP. And the reason they've run out is maybe they haven't registered. Now, obviously, we'll obviously look after the patient, and, you know, never judgmental, because there's all sorts of things that go into, you know, situations that people are in. But what I would say is try and be proactive. And when you get to the university, one of the first things you need to do is register with your GP, because typically you might get there and be absolutely fine, but you might find a couple of months' time, you come down with a tummy bug, or there's some reason that you need to see the GP, and then you've got to go through the hassle of registering. It takes time, and they're not available. So, and I know from speaking to a lot of students that many don't actually register throughout the whole time at university. So I would encourage people, please, when you know you're going to university, I know that universities, and I'm sure University of Lincoln, do make it very straightforward in terms of what your local GP practices are, how to register. So if there's one of the few things that you do when you get there, please do register with your GP, so that any ongoing medications you need are accessible, so that, you know, if you need any support from your GP, you can just go there, you're registered, and there's no barriers.
And Julie, it'd be handy for you to explain how our University of Lincoln students can register with a GP, just for anyone who's joining us this September.
Yeah, so we're really lucky. So if you've declared a disability medical condition already to the university, so as parents, encourage your children to look at their emails, because we're emailing your children probably every month at the moment, giving them lots of tips and things that they need to be doing. Our University Health Centre is actually on campus. It sits below the Student Wellbeing Centre, so you can't miss us really. And we're very lucky. On Moving Sunday, the health centre open. They register students on the day that you enrol. So we work student wellbeing, most of the student services colleagues work, and we'll enrol you, and then we'll kind of encourage you to go and register with your GP. And it's at that appointment they'll check things like, have you had your meningitis vaccine? Most people should have done by now, but if they haven't, we can administer it on that day should you choose. So it's really simple here at Lincoln to register, and we would actively encourage you as parents and our students to do that.
And I'm just going to say hi to Megan Greaves, who's the mental health lead at our Students' Union, and who's joined us today to say hi. So thanks for that. We will come back to your question, Megan. But first off, I'm going to pick up on Hannah Mountain's question, because I think it's a really good question. It relates to one of your big concerns, Julie, as well. She asked, how can you open up about mental health? It's really hard to talk about. And I know that you've both said about the fear that A&E shouldn't be the place where you first talk about mental health. So Julie, over to you first.
Yeah, and actually that was one of my questions for Alex as well. So I watched your interview with Boris, and it was something, Alex, I feel we've actually got in common. You know, A&E or local hospitals shouldn't be the first place where our young people decide to talk about their mental health for the first time. So Alex, for you, being an A&E doctor, what advice would you give to the people watching today to encourage them to come and talk to us as early as they can? Because I'm so passionate about this. I don't want these people going through A&E. They need to come and talk to us.
Well, first, I would say, for anyone, whenever I think we need to normalize as a society. This is one of the big things I want to do in my role, about talking about how you feel, whether you're having a good day or bad day, just being open about your actual feelings. And I think, for everyone, having someone in your inner circle, in your friendship group, or whatever that you feel comfortable with, is a real benefit in the first place. When I felt the way I did at the university, I spoke to my mum, but I also spoke to my friends as well. And even just doing that really, really helped. I looking back, of course, and now things would be very different. I really would have and should have gone and spoken to the university. And I think having someone like yourself, Julie, I think so passionate about well-being and mental health, going to speak to you early on, as soon as an issue arises, allows intervention and actually working around that problem earlier. Because what we know is that, the same with most things in life, that if you deal with a problem early on, it's much less likely to develop into a bigger problem, and therefore is often much easier to kind of fix or kind of work on, or find solutions too. And I think to anyone in general, particularly that's seen the news in the last few days, and some of the headlines have been there around shame and stuff, there's absolutely no shame in speaking about your mental health. I'm yet to meet anyone on the planet who has had a perfect life with no bad days, only has good days, that has this kind of filter of the world that's perfect. It just doesn't exist, actually. And so understanding that and going, everyone has bad days, everyone has struggles at times, and times in their lives where they don't feel good. It might be for a day, it might be for weeks, it might be for months. Everyone experiences it. And so don't feel ashamed to speak out and talk to someone. Having a service such as a wellbeing service there at Lincoln means you can speak to people in confidence, in a way that's supportive, with people that generally care about your outcome and what happens in terms of your mental health. A&E, unfortunately, when necessary, sometimes it is the appropriate place for certain things. But what we want is that people, before they end up in a situation where they need to go to A&E, is actually seek support either through the GP, through the university, speaking with their friends and family, so that actually you can do as much as you can to work through things before it ends up at that point. Because a lot of the time, as you said, Julie, it's not the right place for most people. So please do, speak to people like Julie. They care and they'll support you, through whatever you're experiencing.
And Julie, I know you had a question for Alex with regard to the gap between child and adult services. So I'll hand over to you to ask that one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, one of the things we often see, Alex, obviously we've got new students arriving at the university. So for our students who are listening today, some of them may well be in local services, whether that be mental health services such as disordered eating clinics. Often we find that those students are in child services, going to adult services, then moving out of county to a different, a different county, as in Lincoln, and they're discharged. So sort of using your new role, do you feel, have you got any thoughts, Alex, on how you can use your new role to help with that gap and ease the transition for our students?
Yeah, well, I mean, for my, my role, I want to be a voice for young people, and particularly around issues that clearly are important and pertinent to young people. And one of the things that we certainly identified, we had a mental health action group meeting yesterday where I was there with Gavin Williamson, so the Secretary of State for Education. We had Michelle Donnellan there as well, who represents universities and young people. Children, young and young people was Vicky Ford. So we spoke, amongst with young minds, student minds, place to be. A lot of the other charities there, and we identified key areas that we felt we need to focus on. And one of those was on the kind of transition, and I think transition points in people's lives, particularly young people, obviously. And one of those big transition points is going from school to university, or college to university, or college to apprenticeships, or college to the workplace. And how do we support people better in that time? Because we see often that can be a time where people have a spike in mental health conditions or problems. So we certainly, and I want to kind of work very much on, on that area ongoing, and I think we need to look very carefully at how we support people in terms of going from services. So if you're being looked after, and say that you're from, just for example, say from Wales, and you're under the care of it might be a physical health or mental health services, whichever, and you're moving to the University of Lincoln, I think or an outer area place or university or place of work, having, giving time, as much time as possible to plan, I think is very important. So letting your support service know, whether it's physical or mental health, letting the doctors and nurses looking after you know that you're going there, and that's the plan. And also making contact, for example, with the university, letting them know that you are going to need support at the time when you move there. So, support services, can be made aware before you attend there, and potentially trying to register with the GP early if possible, and also maybe it may well be appropriate for, in certain circumstances, for referrals to be made to those sectors, so that actually, if you need to have support, and have a very quick transition, that can be made. But most of the time with these things, it's about planning ahead as much as possible. But I am aware, and I do believe it is an area that there are issues, and it's not as streamlined or seamless as it should be. So certainly it's something that I am aware of, and we need to focus on.
And it's definitely coming through in the chat, actually, Dr. Alex, that this is an issue which lots of parents and young people are definitely saying they feel needs to be addressed. So I think it's brilliant that you're picking it up. And tell me, are there any other things that you desperately want to see the government or the Prime Minister do as a result of your new role?
I think, since I lost my brother, I think last summer, he was supposed to go to university in Southampton to study medicine. I think a big part of my focus has been around the stigma. So I want to work further to destigmatize mental health. I think part of that is through education at schools, changing the culture at schools to have a whole school approach towards well-being. And of course, with universities, I think actually a lot of universities have led the way on this. I think in what you're doing, and having someone who is there to support the well-being of students is a real step. So creating a whole school approach at schools, having mental health higher up on the curriculum of importance is vital. And of course, integrating more support services. Some people might have seen the announcement on Friday. I'd campaigned heavily to get £79 million, or to as much money as possible, really, into for the mental health support team. So these are experts in mental health, the psychologists and so on, who work in hubs to support various schools and support children who might be struggling, and basically trying to intervene, as we said before, sooner rather than later, earlier, before children might need referral to services such as child and adolescent mental health services. So, and also actually part of that funding is for CAMHS for those services as well. So I really want to work and make sure we're supporting young people. I certainly as well, I spoke to Michelle Donlan about this. I think supporting students is vital in the ongoing months and years. I think the fallout from the pandemic in terms of mental health, I think, will be long lasting. I don't think this is a quick fix. I don't think there's any quick answers, but I think we need to be aware that there's going to be a lot of people who've maybe had bereavement, or they've lost members, they've had changes of circumstances, whether they've lost their job or it's affected their relationships, or they just feel that they've lost, a year of their life. A lot of people feel a deeper grievance, the fact that they've lost time. So, I really want to make sure that we do as much as we can for people. And that's a big push that I'm doing, is basically part of my role, I think, is to try and bring the mental health to the forefront whenever we're talking about things, and whenever we're thinking about something, we're going, well, have we got our mental health hat on here as well? Like, what can we do more to support people? And that includes university students and schools.
I'm so sorry for your loss of your brother, and it is so important that there is support out there for everyone and for young people, and that's definitely coming through in the chat. And Owen Liggins, who's one of our staff here at the University of Lincoln, who works at the Student Life team, is reminding us that the Student Life team provide lots and lots of additional support that's very easy to access digitally. So because sometimes picking up the phone or contacting someone directly can be quite terrifying, I think that's true. But Julie, I'll ask you perhaps to say a few words.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Ellie. Yeah, I mean, we've spent a lot of the last year really, in some respects, the pandemic's made us think about our service. So, you know, we used to encourage students to actively walk in the door. So now I think it's much more open for students to come to student wellbeing. We have developed, and we've been doing this for a while, but certainly over the last year, we've developed a tier approach to student wellbeing. So there's so many self-help resources on the Student Services website there, because we do realise some students might necessarily want to come and talk to us. So then if we can encourage them to look at some self-help and some self-care information, and then the next step might be a brief conversation, we're hoping that that stepped approach to wellbeing might be more beneficial for our students.
And I'd say as well, check out those resources. I think often people wait until they feel like they need it before having a look. Just take, before you start university, take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, familiarize yourself with the website, what resources are available there, because actually it's not just about yourself. You having or understanding what support's available might mean that if someone, one of your friends or fellow students are struggling, you will have some understanding about what's available to point them in the right direction as well. And I think that's important to note, because we've got responsibility for each other. I think one of the things that the pandemic has done is shown how much we know we should all care for each other, really look out for each other. So having that awareness and being armed with some of the knowledge and tips that are on the site allows you to hopefully support your fellow students as well.
I think that's so true.
Yeah, I was just going to pop in there and just say, actually, Alex, one of the things our student union have done is supporting the Student Mind Support Your Mate campaign. So we're actively encouraging our students to go and take that training, so that you know how to support your friend if they are going through something that they might not be able to contact student wellbeing or don't feel comfortable about. As a friend, you might be able to help them. So yeah, for our current students, check out that, because it's available, and again, look at their website.
And hopefully, as you say, the pandemic, one of the positive outcomes is hopefully it encourages all of us to be nicer and be kinder and look out for each other. Now, I'm being reminded by our producer that there will be lots of people watching who are inspired to study medicine or nursing or healthcare, or any one of a myriad of courses that you can do here at the University of Lincoln. And if you are interested, tomorrow we've got a virtual open day tomorrow afternoon. I believe it starts at 4:00, but please have a look at our website and you can register to attend. And also we're hoping to do a physical open day in London, which Dr. Alex is going to be there, again talking about student welfare and wellbeing, and that will be on the 18th of August. And again, you can register to attend that. And it is 4 till 6 tomorrow. A huge thank you to my colleague Emma for that prompt. So there are lots of reasons to not let life stop just because of COVID, and to think about your future and start planning for your future. And Dr. Alex, are there any words that you would say to anyone who's worried about thinking about the future or thinking about next steps?
Well, I think, for anyone that's this time has been, I felt a lot of, for a lot of people, it's felt like a very negative time, but there is optimism out there. Like I said, the rollout of the vaccine program amongst, I think, a lot of people would have certain opinions of how things have gone, and been managed and, whatever over time. But one of the things that's really helped me mentally, I think in terms of my mental health, has been, the feeling that we're making real progress with this vaccine, and the hope that actually we could be back to a lot of normality by summer. I mean, here, in England, we're looking, I believe it's the 21st of June, isn't it? I've actually got my diary as a day of getting my life back. So, there's some positivity, I think, coming, around that, and hope that will tie in nicely with when universities restart. And I hope people's experience in the next year or so will be vastly different to what it has been. There's a lot of things I think we'll take from this pandemic that we'll have learned. I think things around self-care, importance of mental health will be there. I think the importance of looking out for each other, the sense of community, the value of the NHS, I think has been one of the real positives from the pandemic. We've realised, I think, more than ever how important the NHS is. And for anyone that's watching, considering going into medicine or nursing or any other kind of career within healthcare at all, and in any of its myriad of forms, including mental health services, it's a fantastic industry to work in. It's such an element of reward, and even though like some of the things I've seen have been really, really hard and difficult, I still feel very privileged to work and do what I do, and working as part of a team, in A&E or whatever sector it is in health. It's so rewarding. It really is. So I can't help but give a shout out to anyone that wants to do health related studies. Go for it.
And there's been a massive boost in the number of people looking to study health-related programs this year. We've seen unprecedented applications. Julie, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing some work actually with our current student nurses who amazingly have been on the front line, and on their first year, second year placements, we're finding this is where they're going, straight into the front line. And I think it's that. I think it's a lot of our our applicants are wanting to, help give back. The NHS, it's been such. I went for my vaccine a few weeks ago, and I'm not an emotional person particularly, but actually I got quite emotional standing in the queue waiting for this vaccine. The effort that's going in there from all of the NHS, yes, quite rightly, is applauded. And I think possibly our applicants, realise they want to give back as well. And our current students, Ellie, I need to take my hat off to our current students who are our paramedics, our people in ambulances all over. They're just absolutely fabulous. We've done some work with them, producing some guides in terms of dealing with their anxiety in professional settings. We've been representing them at their staff and student forums and just helping them through this. But yeah, absolutely fabulous.
We've had a lot of students in, Lewisham Hospital. We've had the medical students stepping up to help. Of course, we had a lot of the fifth years who graduated a bit early to help bolster the kind of the troops and the wards and help out. And we also had so many, students in general volunteering to do St. John Ambulance and similar roles like that, which was fantastic. I remember a couple of St. John Ambulance volunteers, in our department from all sorts. I think one did arts, the other one was, I can't remember the studying. It was something like media. There was all sorts of backgrounds of people who thought, I want to help. Actually, I'm not able to go into the university as I was, but I'd like to do some, to help on the front line. So it's important to actually recognise the volunteers in this pandemic who continue to play a big role. Actually, and I think particularly in this vaccine rollout, there's a huge number of volunteers who do their bit as well.
I think also I have to mention our University of Lincoln art students who made scrubs for all the local hospitals, and also our University of Lincoln engineering students who made PPE for all the local hospitals right at the beginning when none of that was available. And I was incredibly proud of our student body. Here at Lincoln, we really are one community and we support each other through everything. And it's been really, really brilliant to see. I'm going to nip back to a question that was posted earlier by Rosie Ragg. And it was a really good question. It was, what inspired you to become a doctor, Dr. Alex?
So I think, do you know what? I from quite a young age, I wanted to do it, to be honest. I always liked science. I always liked people. And, I kind of really wanted to do something that combined the two. I wasn't so much into specific subjects of science that I wanted to do a specific, chemistry or whatever. I enjoyed it. I was just interested in a bit of everything, basically. And as I said, I love being around people. So medicine seemed like the kind of perfect draw for me. And I remember watching early versions of City Hospital and earlier versions of 24 Hours in A&E, and just thinking, this is so awesome. It's really exciting, and I enjoy the buzz. I mean, if you work in A&E, you've got to have an element of you that enjoys adrenaline and enjoys the thrill of working there, and I love the buzz of it, really. It was something that I think earlier on I decided on, but it wasn't an easy route. I mean, I now know that I'm dyslexic. I didn't until after I graduated from university, and I would say I struggled a bit at school with the writing and sometimes the essays and those kind of things, and I had to work particularly hard, I think, to compensate for some of that. Now, obviously, knowing what I know, I clearly you can access a lot of support. And I know that all the universities now have a huge amount of support if you are dyslexic, but it did make things a bit more difficult for me at the time, not being aware. And I just would say to anyone who is dyslexic like me, not to feel deterred by that, because actually, not to big myself up, whatever. But I got a distinction from med school. I did well, and I think I had a lot of knockbacks. I first applied to medical school, University of Liverpool. I missed out on one of my A-level grades by 2 marks. My chemistry was dropped. I'm blaming the dyslexia, but I probably should have made sure it was better. Anyway, I missed out my marks, but it was a huge knock. But then you pick yourself up and you go, that didn't quite work out. We go again. And I got my place at Peninsula Medical School, and actually it worked out perfectly because the curriculum there suited my style of learning. It was very supportive. I kind of really did well there. So I think for some people who think, oh gosh, school has been a bit of a slog for me, it's not been that easy, that doesn't mean you won't excel at university. Because I say I had to work very hard at school, and I felt that university was my style of learning, and I just kind of took off from there. So don't be deterred by that, and don't let yourself be put off from going for things. I think, my mum always used to say to me when I was younger, you can achieve anything in your life if you put your mind to it. And I think it's a brilliant bit of advice. And I certainly still use that now. I'm faced with the challenges. I think, gosh, even getting this role, it's like, what am I doing getting this youth mental ambassador role? And you think, well, put your mind to it and you go for it and do your best. And I think to anyone, if you've got your sight set on a goal, just go for it. You'll find a way.
I think that's really inspiring. We've got an interesting question from Abigail, who feels we've strayed away from the point, and she's very keen to hear a little bit more about the mental health ambassador role that you do.
Apologies, I talk in tangents.
I think it's my fault, don't worry.
So essentially, I've been working on mental health for a good couple of years. So when I came off Love Island years ago, for the reasons we discussed, I wanted to do work around and do some more work around stigma and around supporting people, particularly young people, around mental health. So I've done a lot of campaigns with Samaritans of Mind and co. Over the last few years. In fact, I went to number 10 Downing Street in 2018 as part of World Mental Health Day to talk about support at universities and schools. So I have been working on this for a while. Obviously, since my brother passed in the summer, that huge focus came, and it became one of my primary missions of the things I wanted to achieve. And so I'd spent about 5 months, I guess, after he passed, speaking to pretty much most of the key stakeholders within mental health, whether it's the charities, the organisations, the teachers, the leads, education, NHS, to find out what was out there, what needed to change effectively. So I opened up I launched my campaign on the 1st of January, and then I released an official letter to the Prime Minister, I think the 4th or 5th, again, open letter on social media, which fortunately had a huge amount of backing and went pretty viral. And number 10 reached out shortly after that. So I then went through a period of time of lobbying with Cabinet and members of Parliament and number 10 to kind of share the ideas and the things that I kind of worked on. And then the feeling was, well, why don't we bring you on in a capacity, an unpaid capacity, very importantly. I want to remain objective, but a capacity that you work with the government and try and get some of the voice and some of the views of young people into decision making. Because I'm not a mental health expert, I don't have a PhD, I'm not a consultant psychiatrist, but what I do have is a passion. I've got the platform, and I work pretty relentlessly as well when I'm really focused on something. So it was really about bringing attention and making sure that when we're having meetings with experts, with the professors, with leads of policymakers and MPs, that we're actually representing what young people want as well. It's not just about those views that young people need that presence as well. So what I try and do is bring some of these things, particularly like we're talking about here today, to the forefront in those meetings. So moving forward, I really want to focus on, that is the primary thing, is making sure in everything we do that we actually have young people's, best interests, their well-being at kind of heart. So I'll continue to be a member of the Mental Health Action Group. I'll be attending meetings kind of around these key things. I'll continue to work on campaigns on breaking down stigma, and there's a lot of work to be done. I think it's quite exciting, and I look forward to kind of the next few months and years ahead, really.
I think it's amazing. Yeah.
Can I ask Alex, with your ambassador role, so you've mentioned, you've secured 79 million, I think it is. So your plans are, I think you mentioned CAMS and then schools. What sort of things are you thinking about? Can I ask?
Yeah, so the fund. So one thing we saw was that in 2017/18, the Green Paper was announced, which included the development rollout of mental health support teams, which would work alongside schools to provide wellbeing support and really be there to support teachers and young people throughout their education. And then there was also an element of the plan was to put mental health leads in the schools, of which I think 2/3 of schools have the leads. However, the mental health support teams were only on target for hitting 25% of schools by 2023, which, given it started in 2018, isn't the most optimistic of timelines. So I wanted to kind of look at how can we improve that, and a lot of things come down to funding and to money. So putting this funding in is going to speed up that process, and I do want to look at having this being annual funding, but obviously that's a conversation that I'm still going to have. But that, looking to make sure that we actually every year make sure we're giving these support teams the money they need to roll out as much as possible. And then, of course, the other aspect we really noticed, particularly during the pandemic, is the pressure on the CAM service has just been exponential, and they really were crying out for more money and support. So a chunk of that money is going to go to them as well. But in terms of next year, I want to try and secure more funding and further funding for them. But and I know people will say, and some people say, well, there's a lot of other areas that need the money as well. But it's challenging because we're in a very difficult economic situation at the moment, and in an ideal world we'd have unlimited money for everything. So we have to kind of target where we can put the money. But hopefully in the next few months there will be some more announcements, particularly around support for university age students, but we'll have to wait and see a little bit for behind the scenes. But there's hopefully some more positivity coming there as well.
We've got a really good question from Becca Sharp that relates to what you're saying. She's saying, hi, I'm from the Peace of Mind Society. We're a mental health society on campus at the University of Lincoln. What sort of things would you recommend for us to do to help support you in what you are doing?
Well, firstly, thank you, Becca, for your question. Also for your work. I think it's amazing how how many people now have taken ownership of, like, what can we do around wellbeing, mental health? How can we support people around us? What can we do to improve the situation that we're in? And I think that has been invaluable throughout, particularly this pandemic. In terms of moving forward, I can't do things alone. I'm one person with as many hours and minutes in the day as everyone else. So having the backing of all of you, and then particularly, I think, the realization that, let's take this for example, the reason I'm in this role is because so many people were so passionate that this needed to happen, that something needed to change, that's what made the movement. It's not me as an individual, it's a cumulative effect of a lot of people that decided the status quo was no longer acceptable. So I think in the ongoing time, it's continuing to do exactly what you're doing, having support groups and groups that work on well-being and campaign around mental health, continue raising awareness, making sure that that mental health becomes something that is just a normal part of conversation, whether it's university life or school life. And also, what would be really helpful is when I do launch further campaigns in the future, of which there certainly will be ones coming, particularly in the next few months. It'd be very helpful if you guys can share, can support, you can help make noise about that, because ultimately, again, we can make things change and bring changes if everyone says this needs to happen. So any support on socials and stuff would always be appreciated. So thank you.
That's really good. And I think we've all got to support Dr. Alex in what he's doing. So please do take 5 minutes out of your day to do that. I'm going to pick up, there's a couple of people who have asked questions repeatedly, and I just want to try and answer them. So Hannah Minto says, I've been to CAMS, CAMH 3 times now, and I've been discharged each time as I don't fit their criteria. Is there anything you could do about people like me who sit in the middle with no help?
I think this is a particular area that I think a lot of people raise concerns around, and part of the reason that I was so keen to push the mental health support teams at schools, for example, is that they provide that in between, or they're a good source of that in between. So, one end you've got the teachers and staff in the school to help provide support if someone's, say, struggling, and then the other end you've got your CAM service, but it didn't feel like there was very much in between. So that is why I think the rollout of this is vital. But the other thing I would say, specifically in the case that you're talking about, it is difficult because there's a lot of complexities around the scenarios that I'm not privy to that information, just from that question. But it's awareness that there's a lot of support out there other than CAMHS and other than those referrals. So there's a new service called the Hub of Hope, which you can look at online, and you can actually put your postcode in and see what support services are available in your area. There's also fantastic organisations such as Samaritan's Minds, Young Minds, Student Minds, Shout, a text-based service, which do provide amazing support. They provide counselling. They can actually provide a lot of the online counselling that you would have, potentially have in your CAMHS service. Not forgetting as well, to seek support from your GP. And then when you're at universities, utilising services such as the wellbeing service that you have here at Lincoln for them to support as well. I think someone's dropped the link in there into the group. Thank you, Emma, for doing that for Hub of Hope. But take a look at that, because they've collated all these services, and you put your postcode in, you can see what's available, what kind of waiting times are and things like that. It's very helpful to have a look.
No, that is really helpful. I'm going to ask producer Darren to run that along the bottom, which is brilliant.
He's ahead of the game.
Oh, he is so good. Now, Morgan Molly asked how she registered to come to our live event, hopefully, touch wood, cross fingers, subject to government guidance, etc., which hopefully will be in London on the 18th of August. Now, I think at the moment you need to email us, and I'm hoping Darren will be ahead of me again, and you can email us at Darren, are you going to suggest an email for me? You can email us to register your interest to attend that event. And if you can't find anyone else to email, thank you, inquiries@lincoln.ac.uk. Thank you, Darren. So that's really good. And also, as well as the live physical event in London on the 18th of August, you can come to our virtual open day tomorrow, which is between 4 and 6. You can study medicine like Dr. Alex by applying to the Lincoln Medical School, but you don't have to be a doctor to change the world. Admittedly, Dr. Alex has been a doctor to change the world, but one of the questions I have for you, Dr. Alex, is I should have remembered you from Peninsula Medical School, but I really became aware of you when you went on to Love Island, and you are not a typical Love Island candidate. What on earth made you go onto Love Island, Dr. Alex?
Well, a good question. I'll tell you what made me go on there. It was my consultant. I'm very good friends with now. She was my senior registrar at the time. It was a good couple of years ago now, clearly. And she basically loved the show and decided that I should be on there. And it basically came back because one of the producers from the show messaged me on Instagram saying, would you like to go on? And I said, no way, like, not for me. I'm very shy. I'm actually a very shy person, very introverted. I was like, no way. And anyway, she basically said, you have to do it. I want you to go on there. It'll be something different. So I basically was peer pressured into it, to be honest. So I guess I got her to thank for, and maybe not to thank for as well, but largely to thank for everything that's happened, really.
No, that's really interesting. And we did have a question earlier, and I'm really sorry, I can't remember who it was from, but who was asking how you cope with negative social media. And I'm sure you must have experienced that as a result of your massively high profile. And so as we come towards the end, do you have any final comments in terms of dealing with sort of that kind of challenging behavior?
I think for everyone, regardless whether you've got a big or small Instagram following or whatever, like at the end of the day, you're a human being at the end of a mobile phone. And so, like anyone, when you're open to, feeling emotions based on what you see. If you see something positive, feel something good, if you feel something bad, then you might feel something negative. But you do also have a choice. And I choose not to listen to the negativity. I know and believe in what I'm doing. I believe in what I'm trying to achieve. And therefore, if I see someone writing negative, I just decide to let it be, and I let it roll off, off my shoulders and get on with it. And equally, I really appreciate the support, but I don't over believe or overhype that support too much, and take a more balanced view. And that way, I think you're less open to being affected by negativity online. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you do, someone will have something negative to say. I got that, that money that was. It was a team effort to get that money, I should say, very importantly, but we got that 79 million, and then people go, oh, well, that's not enough. And some people will say that, and you go, well, you do your best. So don't feel that you have to take on board everything people say. Focus on what you want to do.
Well, I think you're amazing, Dr. Alex. Now, I'm going to come. No, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I think this has been one of the most interesting hours that I've spent, and I apologize for all the clocks. Um, it's been really, really inspirational. You've been really fantastic. Julie, you are equally inspirational. You're one of the most amazing women that I know, and it seems very fitting that it's the day after International Women's Day, because you are absolutely brilliant. You provide so much support for so many thousands of students over the last sort of 10 years or so, and I'm really grateful. Is there any words of wisdom that you want to close with?
I'm just going to say, I use perspective in my personal life, in my work life. I just use perspective. You know, there's always somebody probably worse off than me. So if I'm having a bad day, I go home, I tend to walk the dog, and I just use perspective. I do a lot of mindfulness. Just remember out that we, you know, it's difficult. I'm with Alex, you know, we can't remain positive every day. Nobody can. But just have some perspective on what we're feeling down about.
Thank you all to so many people who have watched us and been part of this discussion this evening. Owen, Leanne, Ella Beeston, you're amazing. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Alex for the final words and let him close us down.
Well, thank you. You know, first of all, thank you to everyone that's tuned in. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to you both for being so kind and generous, really, in this conversation. And I'd echo the thought, you know, the opinion, especially around anyone that works within wellbeing. So thank you, Julie, for everything that you do as well. And I think it's brilliant that University of Lincoln have such a focus on wellbeing, and I hope that a lot of other universities will follow your lead. So thank you to everyone, and thank you for joining us. Stay safe, look after yourself, remain positive, and make sure you do check out, if you go to University of Lincoln, check out their wellbeing support, have a look at the website and see what they've got to offer to support you. Thank you, everyone, and good night.